This is something I'm just honestly floored that I was even able to purchase. Something super cool, and I think most of you will be surprised and amazed that stuff like this was made and it even still exists. Hey, it's Don. Today I wanted to talk about something that I purchased, which is this, I'll call it a book right this moment here. Something that honestly I've never seen in my entire life for sale or even at a show in person. The only time I've even remotely seen something like this is in a picture in a book. I mean, an expensive book most of the time. It may not look like much, it's dirty, it's dingy, it's 150 plus years old as well. So it's not something that was just made the other day. Now, a lot of stuff that I sell can be found on a bookshelf. And it's not a book for the most part, most everything that I sell. Obviously toys and some of the other stuff I sell isn't that way, but there's a large chunk of what I sell that you can literally find on a bookshelf, and most people think nothing about that. One of my best sourcing places in the past, these days I try and go directly to the source, but in the past, one of my best places, what got me into this business, what got me into, making better money where I can afford to live on and do what we're doing with the house and our own building and all that stuff, was estate sales. And bookshelves and estate sale was usually a gold mine of opportunity for many, 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 many reasons. But anyway, before we go any farther, let's have a quick look at this and talk about this for a few minutes here. Now, this is a big, heavy book. Again, I'm lightly using the word book. Brass fittings, steel riveted, I guess landing feet of some sort, a leather name that says France. It's velvet, and this is very early velvet fabric too. This was made in the 1850s or 60s. And what this actually is, and I'm going to open it up very carefully here. Again, it looks like a book. And what this is a sample book of buttons from a specific company. All the buttons in this book, and there are hundreds of them. Some are missing, something that will happen with stuff like this. There's even a few pages that have been apparently removed from this. Just something that happens to something that's old. Just to find this in general is extremely by chance only. So anyway, this is an extremely unique piece. It's very old. The company itself didn't exist after 1913. So this book was made prior to 1913. Some of the items in here do date to the 1850s, and that can be determined by designs, the type of buttons, as well as some of the company information that came with this purchase here. Now, I sunk in right around $200 for this investment. Again, I could pull out some of these, I could sell them individually. In the right realm, the right group of people, this would be worth a good chunk of change as it is, as it sits here, to a historian, a collector, and there's tons of groups. There's sites for just buttons. There's auction houses that just do buttons. Again, buttons are extremely well collected. There are state button societies, there's city button societies, and there's even national button societies, and not just in this country. So if you put something like this in front of the right crowd, you can get some major, major sales, some major, major movement on pieces like this. Now, it's very unique. The inside fabric as well. Let's take another quick look just to go over a few of the details. This is actual, I guess it would have been silk, and it was padded at one time. You can still feel it, but it's since been mushed down. All these are mounted on it now. Some of them are mounted in various different ways. At one time, these were probably stringed on here, mounted with string. Somebody has remounted some of these. Most businesses, say the 1850s to the 1930s or 40s, that were decent sized, even if they only had one big building, wanted uniforms so that they would stand out, and they all wanted buttons that went on their uniforms. Most companies that had anything had buttons on their uniforms, one specifically for their business, and that could go for any type of business. A grocery store, there's Publix buttons. There's buttons for every airline, for every railroad line, for steamships and things along that line. The Titanic, there's buttons from. There's buttons from the post office in every country that you could imagine. So, you know, there's a big draw on all the businesses that needed buttons for it, and this book here would have provided a sample of what you could order. Now, this says France on the side of this book here, and it's in leather. It's been gilt, very nicely done and embossed. It's pressed into there, impressed into there. So it's not cheap. This was made to last. This was made to be opened and closed and, you know, sit on counters. It's made of, you know, fabric lined, very, very thick stock of some sort. And again, it looks like a large part of this, you know, was handmade. It was a US version of it, which is obvious by the fact that it just says France on here, and it's not written in, you know, French specifically for that. So this is probably from a US company here that made uniforms. Many US companies did make uniforms for, you know, French military and things like that, just like the British companies did. Canadian companies as well. There's buttons out there that were made in Japan before World War II that were made for the US Navy. You know, many different things like that. You'll find German-made buttons for some US makers, like diplomatic buttons and things like that. So these books would have been prevalent if you went into a major department store in this country, say Wanamaker, John Wanamaker back in the day, or Sears and Roebuck, J.C. Penney, or Montgomery Ward or something like that. You could order clothing and you could pick buttons from things like this. In some industries, like everybody would probably know Aramark today, and some of the companies that do like clothing and uniforms, they might come around and show you samples of the fabric. They might show you buttons that could potentially go on the uniforms. It's the same principle that was going around and still a thing back in the 1850s. Now, looking back at some higher end auctions value-wise on something like this, the cheapest I could find any of these at a high-end auction, not just thrown up on eBay or something, is $900+, and not in the greatest shape either, probably comparable to what I see here. These just don't show up. It's big, it's heavy, it's a unique item. You can hear a button or two rolling out of here again because there's hundreds of them in here. Now, I paid close to $200 for this item here. If I pieced out some of the buttons in there, I could get that from, say, half a dozen or less buttons specifically, just pulling out a few specific buttons, and then I could turn around and resell the book if I really wanted to. But this is one of those finds that you're not going to run into again. So at this point, I'm in no hurry to do anything with it. I may end up keeping it because I do mess a lot with buttons. We do have some books coming out and things like that. If you like this sort of content and you're, you know, wondering why I don't have a ton more videos coming out, I still produce videos for Patreon. Patreon, usually it's 3 videos a week, every single week, which I've been doing for 5 years. There's heading on 1,000 videos on Patreon that are all sortable with tags and the whole works. So if you want content talking about things that are odd, unique, vintage, and collectibles that we make a heck of a lot of money on, that's probably your good source. I also have a YouTube membership for those who don't want to leave YouTube, and you'll still get most of the same video content as well. But again, I've never stopped producing. We're working on a building which we paid for from selling things like this. At this point, just in buttons, I've sold probably close to $140,000 or more in just shirt uniform buttons prior to World War II. You know, and then I sell paper. I happen to have a bunch of tobacco cards here, including some early baseball cards from the same sets as Ty Cobb and Honus Wagner and things like that. I mess with a ton of stuff, and I love talking about it. So if you want to get good content, in-depth content, serious content, you know, for those who want to up their game and, you know, spread apart from the pack and find things that have little to no competition to sell, these are usually it. There's only a limited information that you even need to know because they don't make this stuff anymore. This find here is once in a lifetime find. Truly, truly once in a lifetime find. Something I'm never going to find again. And believe it or not, we found quite a few things in just the last week or two outsourcing that I've never seen, never thought in my wild dreams we'd run into, because right now it's hot. Summertime's the best time to source if you didn't know that as well. And along with sourcing right now, it's just flooded with good merchandise out there. You buy in the summer when there's a ton of it, you pay a lot less for it, so when it comes winter, you've got a ton of good merchandise that you can sell for a higher price because it sells for more, usually in winter. Most people are inside, fourth quarter is usually the best. Large chunks of businesses, the majority of their sales happen in fourth quarter, or at least the end of third quarter and then in fourth quarter. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. If you want to see more, check out my Patreon membership. I have links down in the description box, or you can also check out my YouTube membership as well. I'm Don, the Auction Professor. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
When entering the world of art, you'd be smart to dress the part. Gentlemen prefer Hanes, with all the ladies draped in crepe. The artist loves the human shape. Gentlemen prefer Hanes. Hanes will make you smooth and silky, shapely, sexy. Wear a pair and you could be captured for posterity. Gentlemen prefer Hanes.